If you own a Toronto condo or condo townhouse, the plan has always been to sell it and buy a house. I need you to hear what happened in July, because the part of this market you were counting on staying soft did not stay soft. Semi-detached houses across the GTA are now trading at a rate that puts the one segment within reach of a seller's market, not the whole market. I'm not talking about detached houses. I'm talking about semi-detached houses specifically, which is the exact type of house a condo owner, condo townhouse owner buys when they finally make their move. And the odd part is that semi-detached prices fell harder in July than any other house types. So the house you want got cheaper and harder to get in at the same month. Most people are only going to hear the first half of that sentence, and they're going to walk into September thinking they have all the time in the world. Let me show you the supply data, because that is where this shows up first. And it is the part almost nobody reads. Start with what came to the market. In July, there's about 9,000 new houses hitting the market in the GTA. Talking about detached, semis, freehold townhouses. And we add all those together. Last July, that same number was about 10,000. So that's about a 17% drop in number of houses being offered for sale. And that's within 1 year. Compared with last July, roughly 2,000 houses that would have come to the market did not come to the market. Sales in that same group was about almost 4,000 against 4,000 from last July. Basically the same number of buyers turned up. So the demand side barely moved and the supply side fell out from under it. So that combination is the whole video. When sales hold flat and listings drop by almost a fifth, the people who are buying are competing against each other for a small pool of houses. It does not show up in the average price right away. It shows up in the ratios first, and the price follows 2 or 3 months later. So let's break that 18% apart by type, because the three house types did not behave the exact same way at all. Detached new listings went from 8,000 to just shy of 7,000. So it's down about 15%. Freehold townhouses went from about 1,500 to about 1,200. So that's down almost 20%. And semis went from 1,300 to 900. So that's down almost 28%. Semi listings fell nearly twice as fast as detached listings. More than a quarter of the semi supply that existed last July is not there this July. And that's a type with the fewest listings to begin with. When you start from a small number, losing a quarter of it hurts a lot more. Now, let's look at the accumulated pile, which is the number that actually decides how it feels to shop. Active freehold listings at the end of July were about 15,000. Last July, over 17,000. So that's about 2,000 fewer houses sitting on the market than at the same point last year. So that's about almost a 13% drop. If you're out looking in July, you're not imagining it. There's way less to see. The same pattern holds underneath. Detached active is down about 11%. Freehold townhouses down 15%. Semi-actives down almost 23%, from about 1,700 houses to about 1,300 houses. So sit with that 1,300 for a second. That's every semi-detached house for sale across the entire GTA on the last day of July. Every one of them, from Burlington to Whitby to Newmarket. If you're hunting for a specific kind of semi in a specific pocket of the city, you're not choosing from 1,300, you're choosing from a handful. And I want to be clear about what this is and what's not. Nobody wrote a rule saying fewer people can list a house. What happened is that a lot of the owners looked at what their place would sell for today, decided it was way less than they had in their head, and chose to stay put. That's a choice. And choices reverse. If prices firm up over the fall, some of those owners, they'll come back. The supply squeeze you're looking at is real right now, but it's not permanent. And I would rather tell you that than tell you a one-way story. Turn that into time and it gets clearer. Take the 15,000 houses sitting there, divide by the almost 4,000 that sold in July, and you get about 3.9 months of inventory. If not one more house came to the market, it would take just under 4 months to clear everything. Last July, that same calculation gave you about 4.4 months. So we're getting smaller. So months of supply is a number I watch more closely than price, because it is what sets who has room to negotiate. Above 6 months of inventory, buyers call the shots. Between 4 and 6, it's pretty much even. Under 4, sellers start getting choices. Freehold houses just crossed under 4. And by type, detached sits about 4.4 months, still balanced. Freehold townhouses, 3.4. Semis at 2.3. down from 2.8 last July. 2.3 months is not a balanced market. That's a market where well-priced semis has more than one person interested in. The ratio makes it cleanest. So let me walk you through it slowly. Take the number of sales in a month divided by the number of new listings that month. Under 40% and buyers are in charge. Over 60%, sellers are. In between is the middle ground. Freehold houses as a group came in at about 43% in July. Last July, 36%. Detached specifically, 40%, up from 34%. Semis, 58%, up from 45%. So 58% under 60. So I'm not going to stand here and call that seller's market, but it is a point and a half away, and it climbed 13 points in 12 months. Follow that line back through this year, it has been going in one direction. July, 44%. February, 48%. March, 46%, which is the 1 month it dipped. April, 46%. May, 47%. June, 50%. July, 58%. Up in the 5 of the last 6 months with one down month in March. This is not one strange July. One caution on that chart, so you read it properly. You'll see 2 spikes near the 90s in December's reading. Those are seasonal, and they mean nothing. Almost nobody lists a house in December. So the ratio goes haywire on a tiny denominator. Ignore the December and follow a line through the middle of the year, which is where the real trend lives. Now the part that cuts the other way, because I'm not going to show you only one number that supports what I just said. Houses are taking longer to sell, not less. The average detached house sat 30 days before selling in July, up from 28 last July. Semis, 25 days, up from 24. Freehold townhouses, 28, up from 25. That's the opposite of what you expect in a tightening market. And I do not have a tidy explanation for it. What I can tell you is what buyers are paying against the asking price, because that reads differently. Detached sold at 97% of list on average. Freehold towns, 99%. Semis, 100% of list. 100% of list on semis means the typical semi is selling for exactly what it was listed for. And that's not buyers overpaying. In this market, that is usually a pricing strategy where the listing agent sets the number at or slightly under what they expect and let the offers come in. Read it as a signal about demand, not as proof of value. So the picture is a market where houses sit a few days longer, but then trade at close to full price, and where the pipeline behind them is thinning. So slower to sell, harder to negotiate down. If you're a condo or a condo townhouse owner planning to move to a house, subscribe. I break down the freehold numbers separately each month instead of quoting the composite, like the blended average for the GTA, because the blended average mixes the condos and then any house that you want and then put in one figure and hides what's really actually going on. And if you subscribe, it helps me keep on making videos just like this. TRREB does not publish a Toronto West line. It publishes the city of Toronto, Toronto Central, Toronto East. So I take the city numbers and subtract Central East, which leaves W1, W10, and that's the West End. So 315 freehold houses sold in the West End in July. 643 new listings came up. So that ratio is about 49%. The West End is running at tighter than the region. 49% against 43% across TRREB. Active listings out here sit about 1,000 houses against 1,100 houses last July. So inventory is down about 5%. Months of supply, 3.4. And the semi-detached picture out here is a sharpest version of everything I just showed you. 73 semis sold in the West End in July against 116 new listings. So that's a ratio of about 63%. 63% is over the line. By the standard definition, the West End semi market in July was a seller's market. And there were 181 semis on the market across the entire West End when the month ended. That's the whole shelf from the Junction to Etobicoke. I want you to be careful with the number that small. 73 sales in 1 month is not a huge sample, and 1 month does not make a trend, but sits on top of a regional semi number that has climbed 5 months out of 6, which is what makes me take it seriously rather than write it off as noise. For detached out here, the West End ran about 46% with 800 houses on the market. Freehold townhouses, 40%. So detached is still the softest of the three, and semis are the tightest, which is the reverse of what most people assume. Now prices, and this is where it gets strange. The average detached house across TRREB sold for 1.29 mil in July, down 5% from last July. The average semi sold for 964,000, down 7%. Freehold townhouses average about 903,000 against 929,000 last July. So blend the three together, and the average freehold house in GTA sold for about 1.18 mil in July, down from 1.257 mil in June. So the semi is the tightest freehold segment in the region, the one where listings drop the most and the ratio climbed the hardest, and also the one where the price fell the furthest, down 7.4%, while detached was down 5%. Those two things sound like they cancel each other out. They don't, and the reason matters. An average selling price is a backward-looking number. It reflects deals that were negotiated 30 to 60 days before they close, and it moves around based on which houses happen to sell that month. If more of July semis sales came from the lower end of the range, the average drops even if every individual house sold well. The ratio is measuring what is happening right now. The price is telling you about the spring. That gap between the two is the window. It is the only time you get to buy on last season prices in this season's competition, and it closes on its own. Watch the semi-detached price line and you can see it. $1 million last July, it slid through the fall, bottom at 945,000 in January, climbed back to $1,067,000 in May, and came in at 964,000 in July. That's not a market falling off a cliff. That's the market moving sideways in a wide band, which is exactly what a market does right before it picks a direction. Here's the number that matters most if you're the person I'm talking to. In the city of Toronto, the average condo sold for $672,000 in July. The average semi sold for 1.122. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is about 450,000. 12 months ago, that gap was over $100,000 wider. The reason it isn't two percentages. The 416 condo average fell about 1.6% over the year. The 416 semi-detached fell 9.9%. Your condo held its value almost perfectly, and the house you're buying dropped almost 10%. So the distance you have to cover shrank by more than $100,000 without you doing anything at all. That is the single best thing that has happened to a Toronto condo or condo townhouse owner in the last 3 years. And it happened quietly while everyone else was reading headlines about condo prices falling. So what do you actually do with this? If you own a condo or a condo townhouse and you want a semi, the useful thing to understand is that the two halves of your move are moving at different speeds now. The sell side of your trade is stable. The buy side got a little bit cheaper, but it's getting more competitive by the month. That argues for going earlier rather than later. It argues for being ready to move properly when something right comes up, rather than thinking about it for a week. If you're shopping for detached instead, you have room. 4.4 months of supply and a ratio of 40% means detached is still the balanced part of this market. You can take your time in a way that a semi buyer cannot right now. If you own a semi, you've been sitting on the fence about selling, competition you're worried about is thinner than it has been in years. 1,300 semis on the market across the entire region. One thing I will not tell you is that is a straight line from here. The ratio has climbed 5 months out of 6, but a regional figure is a regional figure. Your street is on its own market. A semi back onto a rail corridor and semi 2 streets over on quiet block are not competing for the same buyer. And no TRREB number can tell those two apart. What the regional figure tells you is which direction the wind is blowing. It cannot tell you what your specific house is worth. The question asked before you list or before you write an offer is not what the GTA average did last month. It's how many houses like yours are actually available in your pocket right now and how many of them sold in the last 60 days. The August report lands in early September. The one number I'll be watching is whether the semi ratio holds above the mid 50s or drops back to where it was in spring. If it holds to a second month, the window I just described is not a window anymore.